Welcome to the August 21st, 2025 meeting of the Ann Arbor Renters Commission. The purpose of the Renters Commission is to advise the City Council and the City Administrator in matters affecting renters in the city. The Ann Arbor Renters Commission is made up of voting members who are appointed by the mayor and approved by City Council, two non-voting City Council liaisons, two non-voting members representing different landlord perspectives, and a non-voting representative to the University of Michigan Student Legal Services. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, you'll be able to speak through the webinar link or by phone, depending on your method of access to this meeting. To be called on to speak, callers must press *9 if listening by phone, or use the raise hand feature if viewing through the web link a2gov.org/renters commission meeting. You will then be called upon by city staff one by one using the last three digits of your phone number or by username if available for those accessing through the web link. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. Please state your name at the beginning of your comments. City staff will indicate when callers have 30 seconds left of their 3-minute comment period. After 3 minutes, they'll be placed on mute so that we can proceed to the next speaker. Moving on to roll call. Sorry, Commissioner Else?
Hi guys, I'm here in Ann Arbor just finishing up Meet the Teacher, and I'll join on the computer in about 10 minutes.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Droppelman?
Present in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Ratcliffe here, calling in from Ann Arbor. Councilmember Redina?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrison?
Present in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Pitts is absent tonight. Commissioner Liao?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Welcome. Commissioner Wood?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Welcome. Commissioner Larsenes?
Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Rosen?
I'm here in Ann Arbor.
And Commissioner Body?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Welcome. And because we don't have a quorum for tonight, we're going to go ahead and skip to the first public comment.
All right, any attendees in the meeting who would like to address the Renters Commission for up to 3 minutes about any topic can press *9 if listening by phone, or use the raise hand feature if you're viewing through the web link. So go ahead and raise your hand now if you'd like to be promoted in so you can address the Renters Commission. All right, no hands are raised.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and move on. We didn't have any unfinished business, so we'll move forward to new business, which is a presentation from Planning Services. Oh.
Sorry, I missed a bit of it while I was being moved over, but are you ready for me to begin?
Yes, we are. Thank you for being here tonight, and just a little bit of housekeeping beforehand. When it comes time to Q&A, do you want to be the person to call on everyone?
Whatever your preference is, Chair. I'd be happy to do that if it's easier for you.
I think it's easier if you just go ahead and call on people.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Brett Leonard. I'm the planning manager for the city of Ann Arbor. I'm going to, I think my presentation's already been shared with you, so I won't linger on it too long, but I would like to walk through the content with you. As mentioned, if you have any questions, I'm happy to address that. I did receive a few questions after I submitted the materials, so maybe after the presentation I can go through those questions as well, and then I'm happy to entertain any discussion or follow-up after. Hopefully Kristen has given me the important power to share my screen. Is everybody able to see the slide at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Terrific. All right. I'm going to cover a couple of topics. Like I said, I'll try to get through this pretty quickly, but if you have any questions, we can maybe address them after I get through everything, if that's okay with everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about the context of how the city develops, specifically how zoning has evolved in the city over history. I understand that there was interest in the Transit Corridor District, a new district here in the city, so I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the history of that. Talk a little bit about our comprehensive plan effort that is underway right now, an overview of development activity in the city happening currently, and as discussed, we can dive into anything further after that. So just to start, I wanted to make sure that we're all starting with a little bit of a, I call it planner nerding, about how development and how the city does evolve. We are a creature of the state of Michigan, and so we can do the things that the state grants us to do. And one of the things that they allow us to do is to plan and to regulate land. And there are, of course, limitations of that, but the framework for that is we first spend a lot of time engaging with our community, thinking big, thinking broadly, thinking in a lot of different facets about the development of the city, and that's the comprehensive planning process. We look at things like what has been our experience, what has been our evolution over time, and we start trying to link that to where we want to get as a community. What are our goals? What are our aspirations? We use data, we use experience, frankly, of other places. We use our own experience to try to develop strategies and priorities as to how we can get to those goals. And that plan, you might have heard it called a master plan. We call it a comprehensive plan, same term, it's the same document. That, when it is adopted, is rooted in community conversation, in data, in our history, and it is nothing more than a policy document or a to-do list about what we should do going forward. When the comprehensive plan is adopted, nothing changes in the city. There's no immediate impact at the time that that document is adopted. Rather, it is just that. It's a directional statement for where we want to go. Then what we do from that document is we roll up our sleeves and we do the work that it calls for. We do that through a variety of ways. We do that through investing in infrastructure. We do it through changing our ordinances and our laws that govern where and how things can be built in the city. And we make changes to how things must be built. The zoning ordinance, or in our case, the Unified Development Code, that is the principal document and tool that we use to shape how activity on private property can or can't happen. And it's really important. I really want to call out that this line here is that planning process and the process to create those regulations are very important, because under that state legal framework, once you cross that line, once we have set forth our zoning, once we set forth our expectations about where you can build and how you can build, that is then an administrative decision that we make. So another way to think about that is we set out expectations and laws, and if you meet them, you are permitted to develop and use your property in the way that we have prescribed. I don't retain some sort of magical discretion to say, you know what? You seem to meet all of the requirements that we've set forth, but I still don't like this thing about your project, so therefore I'm not going to approve it. The law is set up in a very property owner rights method to say it is the city's responsibilities to set laws and framework about how things can get developed. But then if somebody meets those, it is approved. It is an administrative approval. There's very little discretion there. And that's why that planning process and crafting our ordinances is very important, because once we get to the other side of that line, there is less opportunity for us to shape how the community does evolve or where it evolves. And accordingly, the community engagement process sort of narrows through a funnel as you go through that process. When we're talking about our goals, it's very wide ranging. It's very open. We can consider a lot of different facets of development. But once we get to regulations that are in place, once we get to a project is being presented to us, it is no longer is no longer a measurement about whether or not we have the right ordinances in place. It is, does this project check all those boxes? And if so, it shall be approved. And so there's less and less opportunity for sort of public shaping of that decision at that point. I mentioned zoning is the principal tool that we do it. Currently, our ordinance is called the Unified Development Code, but the first city ordinance or zoning ordinances was adopted in 1923, and it had 4 zoning districts. This is just an excerpt of that map, and you can see like the city village at that time stopped about West Park. So it was, not only fewer districts, but it was a much smaller footprint of the city than what we are today, basically encompassing everything into the freeway rings. As you can see, it had 2 residential districts, a business district, and a commercial and industrial district. Over the 100 years plus since that time, we have greatly expanded our zoning. We are now at 34 zoning districts. We've gone from a 7-page zoning ordinance to over 300 pages. We have character districts. We have overlay districts that layer on top of those zoning districts. Over time, we have added more and more complexity, specificity, and restrictions to how and where you can develop in the city. And all of those 305 pages come from really great intentions. They come from new challenges that the city might face. They come from new areas that the city has grown into through annexations over history. They have come to try to respond to city goals. Most recently, it's goals like supporting EV infrastructure for electric vehicles to help with our sustainability goals. But over time, when you start layering on more and more of those regulations, we can have this framework that starts to develop real challenge and rigidity in our ability to be flexible and to realize development in the city. We have over 100 years of being very good at being additive to our expectations of development, and I pose as part of this planning process in the coming years, we have to think specifically as it relates to housing, how we can start maybe being more focused and removing some of our regulations so that we can realize more housing, more affordable housing, because over time, as land is developed, as it becomes restricted, that creates a scarcity model. And so we have to figure out ways that we can do the most with the resources that we have available to us. The TC1 or the Transit Corridor District. This was that is the newest district created in the city of Ann Arbor. It was created in 2021, and it is intended to take advantage of our transit corridors. Transit corridors are great places that in the history of development of the city of Ann Arbor have been traditionally very automobile focused, and those are unsurprisingly also the areas where some of our most high volume transit riderships are. And so the Transit Corridor District is a concept to say, let's lean into that. Let's start figuring out how can we maximize the development potentials of these places that already have transit service, in many places have really effective multimodal access for bicycle, pedestrian, you name it, so that we can start finding places in our community for more development in really great places for people to live sustainably, maybe at a lower cost because they don't need to have a vehicle as part of their household expenditures. And frankly, we have new visions for maybe no longer the Briarwood parking lot that isn't even busiest isn't even full at the holidays is no longer our vision of a successful city where we're dedicating tons of area to car storage versus to places for people to live, work, or recreate. And so that was a fundamental foundation and philosophy about the Transit Corridor District. The Transit Corridor District tries to accomplish that by taking some of our really our downtown type design requirements into corridor-oriented development. For example, it requires multiple stories. It requires a certain level of transparency on the first floor. That's really important to create a connectivity between uses and the sidewalk and the right-of-way sort of an interaction, a liveliness, and eyes on the street. It benefits in a lot of different ways. It requires within certain proximity of intersections a relatively high first floor, not because that requires you to have commercial uses in there, but we want the building to be constructed in a way that the flexibility is there so that those uses can evolve. It is much more common for commercial or office buildings to convert to residential than residential to convert the other way. And part of that at times is because residential is built with a relatively modest floor height that you can't accommodate things like ventilation or commercial kitchen equipment and the like. They also require design in this district requires the building itself to have a strong orientation to the street. We have had some modifications to the frontage requirements, but we still do require larger sites to be broke up into some blocks. We require maximum setbacks rather than minimum setbacks, again, trying to make connectivity between the sidewalk and the transit and the right-of-way to the uses. Limit curb cuts wherever possible so that we're not creating a lot of conflict points for those multimodal users. And recently, the city eliminated all parking requirements for all uses across the city. Not that parking is not allowed, but we no longer are in the business of dictating to any private developer or landowner how much parking you should have. In this case, we actually instituted parking maximums. So we want to limit the opportunity or prohibit, frankly, large seas of surface parking lot, again, to try to encourage more development of building floor area. So we put limits on the total number of parking spaces in this district, as well as how much of that parking can be surface parking. Basically, we largely limit the size of the surface parking lots to be no longer larger than the building itself. Here's some just crude but hopefully illustrative examples about how some of that is realized. Again, buildings are oriented up to the street rather than traditionally where they would have been set back often behind significant parking lots. Minimum multi-story, transparency on the first floor. And it also features what is a sort of a responsive height restriction. That is, as you get closer to residentially zoned property, the TC1 district drops in maximum height. As you get farther away, it increases in height. And so that ranges from nothing can be built in a TC1 district when it's 30 feet from a residentially zoned property. But when it is more than 300 feet from when it's more than 1,000 feet from a residentially zoned property, it can go up to 300 feet in high, the tallest district in the city. So that is a way that the zoning district is, it sort of responds, it reacts to its context, to its surroundings, but still provides a lot of development flexibility. Here's some examples of things in the city that we see as sort of representative of the type of development we'd like to see evolve over some of these corridors. On the top is a commercial development. Here is South Main. You have the 618 South Main project and the yards. And then here's a couple other examples from other communities. Again, trying to find ways to bring mixed use, more residential density right to the corridor in a really marketable way that people have a lot of options about how they connect and move throughout our community in the future. This has been like anything else with land use. I said we've been zoning for 100 years. TC1 is no different. It is land use regulations is but one influence on how cities grow. And so it started in 2017 and 2018 when actually city council members directed the planning commission and city staff to say, hey, we care about this. Start investigating ways to look at how we can realize this. We created the new zone, a lot of public engagement around that, and then it was adopted as a new zoning district in 2021. And then from 2022 to 2024, we rezoned 4 distinct areas in the city to this new zoning district. The Washtenaw Avenue and near the Washtenaw and Stadium split on the top left. At the bottom left, you have the Plymouth corridor, various components of that from US 23 heading to the west. You have the State and Eisenhower area to the east and northeast of Briarwood Mall, and then the Stadium and Maple corridor on the west side of the city. And we've had one project. We've rezoned about over a square mile of land to TC1. We've had one project so far. We've had a lot of modifications that we've had to consider about the TC1. And here's how I look at it. We'll probably have to make other modifications to TC1. It's a pretty ambitious district, like I said, trying to solve a lot of problems and be very contextual to a lot of different circumstances. It's sort of self-referencing and self-adjusting. And I think we're going to continue to learn about the ways that we can be successful and ultimately start to get more of that development typology in those areas. I mentioned the planning process. We are in the midst of a comprehensive planning process. So right now we are sort of right in this adopting plan area. We've been talking with the community for about 2 years. We've had workshops. We've had meeting in a box. We've met with neighborhoods. We've met with different forums. We've been basically line by line going through draft documents with the Planning Commission this year. And we just recently wrapped up the Planning Commission's edits of the second draft of the document. So that's leading to the third draft, which will be put forth for their consideration. The next steps of that process are for the Planning Commission to say, yes, this is the plan we want to put forward. For the City Council then to also receive that plan and say, yes, this is the plan we would like to endorse for community feedback over about a 2-month period. And it's going to sort of start the formal adoption process of that plan. Well, one of the goals of our plan is that right now we have 8 comprehensive plans, 8 documents that form what that vision is for development of the city. That is hundreds of pages. And it's not to insult anybody, of course, but it's very difficult for anybody to keep that volume of documents, recommendations, goals in their minds when they are at a table, board or commission table such as this, advising the council, or the planning commission making decisions on a zoning, or the city council balancing a wide variety of at times competing interests. It's a lot. And so one of our goals was to simplify that framework, to make it more accessible, and of course to make it more modern. And so the intention is for us to replace 5 of those 8 documents with a new comprehensive plan, and that's the process we're in. The plan does not propose any changes to the tree line urban trail, our recently completed transportation plan, or our parks and open space plan. The comprehensive plan, I think I already described what it is. We started, though, with some additional guidance and direction from the City Council as part of this. They wanted a plan that really tried to center affordability, sustainability, and equity as a planning document. And they gave us a couple of other to-dos. Integrate the A20 carbon neutrality plan to the greatest extent possible. That document includes some very land use centric type of recommendations, a lot of things that aren't. So it's finding the best way to find levers in our land use to advance those goals. Recognize that in the context, we are a city that has sort of covered its boundaries horizontally. And to grow and evolve, we're going to have to start thinking about how we reuse land that we have, get more out of land that we have. And that specifically means adding more housing throughout the city, including in areas that were previously only restricted for single family housing. That's been a big topic of discussion, but it's always been a very North Star goal as part of this planning effort. I've talked about the 34 zoning districts. That can be really restrictive, not only from a housing production perspective, but also from a business flexibility perspective. Over my 9 years here at the city, I've dealt with businesses who are trying to evolve. And before we got rid of parking requirements, their shift from, say, a retail to a restaurant wouldn't be permissible because we had a higher restaurant parking requirement than what the retail was. And so finding ways to just simplify our regulatory framework to provide more avenues for success and evolution for people is going to be really important. Emphasize values, because just like we haven't been able to do always for the last 100 years, nor will we today, nor the next 100 years, we can't always anticipate the questions that we're going to have to face, the challenges we're going to have to respond to. And so I think the plan can do a lot to establish some core values for us to at least have a bit of a worksheet, if you will, to think through problems and approach problems with some sense of what our priorities are. But recognizing that there will be trade-offs at times. We cannot always accomplish every one of our goals with every decision we make, and we have to figure out how to move forward carefully, thoughtfully, advancing them collectively. At times, again, where one might advance further than another. And then finally, land use. Land use decision makings by governments has resulted in segregation. I'm sure many of you have heard of redlining. Zoning is no different. When we enact a zoning ordinance that says, in order to live in some place, you have to have a 20,000 square foot lot. That is a limiting factor to who will be able to have access to those areas of our city. And so being really thoughtful about how we think about our regulatory framework to make sure that we are at a minimum not repeating that, and ideally starting to repair some of those ways that we have had an active role in segregating our communities over time. All of this to say is city regulations are just one factor, and it moves slowly. I talked about the corridors. Those have evolved over decades to where they exist today. On the bottom here is a little bit of a timeline. Here's an example of this is referring to ADUs or accessory dwelling units. You might know them as granny flats. In the city of Ann Arbor, prior to my time here, the City Planning Commission was actually discussing accessory dwelling units in 2000. It was seen as, I think, relatively low-hanging fruit as a way to provide some additional housing opportunity in the city for people to maybe create some more flexible learning in situations. And there was some work happening. And in 2002, there was so much tension over that the city council actually took, I think, largely unprecedented action to say, Planning Commission, stop. We direct you to stop talking about this. So it stayed there. Back in 2016, time passes. An ordinance is presented through community discussions. There was actually a lot of assistance from Washtenaw County at the time, and an ordinance was adopted in 2016. And that allowed for the first time in the city for accessory dwelling units to be constructed where they could be rented out. They could be occupied by somebody other than a family member. But they still had a lot of restrictions. It was only for owner-occupied households. You had to put a deed restriction on your home. It had to have some certain design requirements. We required more parking if you were too far away from a transit stop. And from 2016 till about 2021, I think we got maybe 12, 15 accessory dwelling units. So recognizing again that this was a great opportunity, in 2019, we proposed some changes that might provide some flexibility. Those were rejected at that time. In 2021, those different changes were adopted. And now here we are in 2025, we've permitted about 75 accessory dwelling units. Not all of those have been constructed. Those are how many that we have permitted, which just goes to show something that was seen to be a relatively easy introduction into our community takes a long time and still is a slow realization. Also, on this slide, land use is just one piece of how communities get built. You need land. You need owners who are interested in doing something with their land. You not only need to have the regulations, be it zoning and building code, that enable you to do something, but you have to have capital, somebody who is willing and able to finance it. You need to have materials, which are becoming increasingly more expensive. You need to have labor to be able to do that. And the vast majority of housing gets built with profit. And so there needs to be profit on top of all that. And when you start stacking all of those things up that is required to get a housing unit built, the way I look at it, we are a part of that. We're just a small part of it, but the more flexible we can be, the more we can open up our portion of it, we're only increasing the odds that all of those other things might fall into place and we can realize housing units and affordable housing units in our community. Well, the other thing I was asked is to give a sense of how much are we being built, are being built in the city. So here's, these are housing units completed. These are actually from certificate of occupancy data. I have to give a caveat. This is absolutely certificate of occupancy data, but our system makes it very difficult to pull this out. So, we've scrubbed it the best I can. I think it's representative. On average, I think we're hitting about 400 some units a year since 2014. These are units, again, that are actually converting from that we've given the final inspection and given a certificate of occupancy for. And you get a sense of how many of each type. There are affordable units in these types, but it's a separate data set, so I don't double count them. But there are affordable units as part of these. I could come back to try to get some of that specific data for you if you're interested. On the horizon, we have about 2,400 units under construction right now. And then we have about another 4,000 housing units that have been approved but not yet started construction. I think I've sent some data to Kristen on this. I forgot off the top of my head. Of those two, one of them is inclusive of about 300 affordable units, and the other one is inclusive of about 370 affordable units of that, of the units that are sort of on the horizon. All right. That's the end of my presentation, and then I'll just maybe roll into the questions that I received ahead of time, and then I'm happy to spend as much time as you desire. Some of the questions that I received were, from your perspective with the planning department, what's the biggest hurdle Ann Arbor faces in creating more housing, especially affordable housing? I was actually tempted here to say the University of Michigan. The University of Michigan is such an important economic driver, jobs driver, and because of it being located in our community, we will forever be challenged by the resources of those that can be close to that, will take advantage of being close to that. I also thought that one of the greatest challenges, biggest hurdle, is probably we're doing a really good job with quality of life. We have great schools, we have great parks, we have great amenities. And for the same reason, being focused on a job center, people want to come to a place with great amenities, and money is going to buy access for people that have more than people who have less. But I think at the end of the day, I think the biggest challenge for creating more affordable housing is resources. I think the best affordable housing is going to always require some sort of public resource influx. That might happen with cash. It might happen with providing land, but I think both are important. I think that we should be plentiful in providing a lot of opportunities for housing at all levels. For those that have had an opportunity to see the new Ann Arbor Community Foundation housing report, that's a big aspect of it, right? Part of that is that because we have a lot of affluence and people want to be in this community, it's easy for them to buy down, but it doesn't work, of course, the other way. And so by providing a lot of housing supply across the board, I think helps. But for committed affordable housing, particularly at the lowest income levels, that needs more resources. It's going to need more than our millage. It's going to need more than land. And so I think that is it will always be a limiting factor for us to produce a lot of affordable housing. The latest draft of the comprehensive plan lists a recommendation of adopting anti-displacement policies and advocate for county and state level reform to support them, and state that this is an ongoing effort to be led by the planning department. Can you provide examples of these anti-displacement policies? I want to be honest, this is one of the most difficult things that I've been wrestling with this plan. Anti-displacement policies and anti-gentrification policies, however you want to think about them, I think are among the trickiest, because some of the same things that provide resources and wealth to lower income households also displace lower income households. It's a real challenge. But broadly, I think some of the ways that we do that is one, we continue to invest in things that keep people where they are, continue to invest in our weatherization program, housing rehabilitation programs, help lower income households and seniors stay in their homes to the greatest extent possible. Balanced regulations. Right now, in a lot of our community, in a lot of our, specifically our single family districts, the only thing that you can build is a single family home. And what happens to monetize that, we get really big single family homes when people do that. And so if we can start thinking about providing more options for the development to happen in different places as duplexes or triplexes in those areas, I think that is going to, it's not necessarily going to result in cheap units, but 700 square foot townhomes are going to be on the long term more inexpensive than one single family home of that same square footage. And so providing more flexibility is just going to provide more pipelines and accessibility for different housing types in our community. I think resiliency planning is really important. It sort of goes with that first bullet, making sure that when we're thinking about our most vulnerable populations, we're doing all we can, both on the long term and to be responsive, that even in the short term of something really catastrophic, they are the top of our minds, and we're providing ways to make sure that we can help them thrive and survive and weather those literal or proverbial storms in those areas where they might not have, frankly, the same level of resources that other neighborhoods to do it on their own. And then I think good planning principles, the more we make communities walkable and accessible, that is providing more and more opportunities for people at all stages of their life and all ability levels to be able to live and thrive in this community. If we were to somehow foster a community that becomes more and more reliant on automobile transportation, that is going to start we're going to start losing accessibility for people who can't afford it, people who aren't able to do it. And so it's kind of a cop out because that's good for everybody, those planning principles. But I do think that it has an outsized benefit to low income and vulnerable populations. I mentioned in the plan an equitable plan, and that is similarly to displacement. I think it's one of the most challenging things to do. One, we actually have some really restrictive state laws that really prevents our ability to be very targeted in some ways. But when we think about adding flexibility to development areas, I frankly think about it in a couple of contexts. If we wanted to be equitable, would we provide more development potential to a lower income neighborhood and not to a higher income neighborhood? That's actually going to raise the real estate value of those properties, right? That's going to result in more equity accumulation to those families, but it's going to drive displacement. And so I think another piece of this, and this relates to kind of one of the other questions, is how do you consider these developments in the context of other neighboring properties? I think whether it's equity, whether it's the transition districts, I think carefully applying very similar regulations across the city in broad ways is really important. I think it's really important that we don't pick out a neighborhood and carve out a neighborhood and say that this neighborhood should bear more or less of this flexibility. I think it's something that we need to try very hard to bring that flexibility and broad opportunity across all neighborhoods. I think I'll just leave it there. I think displacement, those are some of the ways that I think about displacement, but I just acknowledge that I think it's a really challenging part of this. And then the comprehensive plan states that zoning alone is insufficient to spur development of missing middle housing. The city must take proactive steps. It lists relaxing development standards as a means. What standards could be relaxed? Like I talked about, taking areas right now that you can only build a single family and allowing more housing to be built there. That's an example. Thinking about height limits, thinking about setbacks, thinking about open space requirements or lot size requirements. we have in a lot of our multifamily zoning districts, we have minimum open space requirements. And I will tell you, particularly a lot of the developments that have been developed, like from the 60s to the 80s, they are huge lawn areas that get mowed. And lawn is actually pretty terribly ecologically. It's not that far from a parking lot. And so thinking about, not to say like, to be clear, we still need natural features protections. We still need natural resource protections, and we intend to keep those. But is it important for us when we're doing a multifamily housing just to sort of arbitrarily say that 40% of the land must remain open so it ends up in sort of some sort of inactive, or would it inactive lawn, or would it be better for us to look at that and say, how many more units could be realized there if we thought about more targeted, like we care about wetlands, we care about trees, but we don't really care about lawn areas as much. So those are some of the types of examples. A big piece of it is lot size and dwelling unit per lot size. A lot of our regulations say that you need so much lot size or square foot per person. And in some places we say that it's appropriate. In some places we say per dwelling unit, you need 20,000 square feet. In other places we say you need 2,750 square feet. We have a history of recognizing there's a lot of opportunity for people to choose to live in different situations. And how can we start providing more flexibility so we can realize more housing? So I think those are some examples of development standards, but I also want to call out process improvements. Even if we were to change no development standards, anything we can do to make the pathway from idea to building permit faster, more predictable. I think that helps too, because when you are in the process, whether you're a homeowner doing an addition or you're doing a large development, a multifamily development, time, carrying costs, professionals, all of that adds up. And so if we can be clear about what our expectations are, verify that you meet them quickly and get you to construction quickly, that will also have the benefit of providing more avenues to missing middle housing. All right. I'll shut up. What questions do you have for me? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. One is a particular zoning. What's an RC zone? And another one is within the plan, and within the talk, like there's a lot about more and more rental units, but there are a number of people who are renters who, whether they're renting in a multifamily complex or they're renting like a single family home, they want to actually own something.
Mhm.
They don't necessarily want to own a single family house with a lot of land, but they do want to be able to own. Um, Within the comprehensive land use plan, is there something that targets, people who are lower to middle income earners who want to be able to own something? Or is that outside of the comprehensive land use plan and is just a different kind of policy plan?
Um, so I don't, you said RC zone was your question? I don't know. We don't have an
Yeah,
RC.
there's no, I was looking on Zillow and it like
Oh,
and it said something was like an RC1 or RC4
oh,
and
R4C, like
oh,
R4C or R1C,
some,
maybe something like that.
something
So
like that.
yeah, okay. Yeah. So our zoning districts, just for a quick overview on the zoning district, generally R means residential. And so we actually have 5 R1 districts. We have R1A, R1B, R1C, R1D, R1E. Each one of those, starting with 1, requires the largest minimum lot size. That's a 20,000 square foot lot, which is about a quarter of an acre, down to R4E, which we allow a 4,000 square foot lot, which is small, a lot smaller than a lot of homes in the city of Ann Arbor. And so each one of those allows only 1 unit per that square footage, and the square footage goes from large to smaller. And so and then that R also translates into R2. You can have duplexes. R3 actually happens to be townhomes. And then we have R4s, which is multifamily. So you're probably seeing a listing for something in one of those residential zones. And each of those comes with lot size requirements, what you can and you can't build. And generally, as the number goes up, we allow more height, greater density, and generally as the lower number, it's more restrictive. So that's
So then is that something that the new comprehensive land use plan where you're talking about kind of evening out the zoning, is that something that that's gonna take care of? So you're not stuck like figuring out 6 different.
yeah. So the comprehensive plan, it's a great question. The comprehensive plan says, look at all those R1s and figure out how to build more housing in those areas. And so, but it doesn't say the way to do that is to get rid of 3 of them and restrict it to duplexes. But yes, it calls for us to say we want those to be consolidated into fewer districts. We want more housing in those single family areas. So we want to expand what you can build there. And then as part of that, we're going to have to wrestle with all of those questions, setbacks, height, all of that. So the plan doesn't change it, but the plan, once adopted, gives me and the Planning Commission the direction to say, all right, now we got to figure out how we're going to change those ordinances to meet that goal.
Okay, so for people who are watching this later, the plan isn't saying this is what this has to be single focus minded. It's a guiding document that then later, after the plan is adopted, then ordinances come into play after there's more planning.
Once the plan's adopted, like a different way to think about this. Once
Like
the
if
plan,
someone comes, it's like, we want to
Yeah, yeah.
build something, then
yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's a great question. So after the plan is adopted, say the plan is adopted in largely its current format.
Mhm.
That format is going to say it consolidates most of our R1 and R2 zoning into a single land use category, residential. And so
Okay.
the premise of that is we don't need 7 different nuances of development typology in those areas. Rather, what is a reasonable way that we can add residential housing units across the city, as I said, equally, equitably in all of those areas? And so then, if that plan's adopted with that mission, one of the first steps might be at the Planning Commission that we start a conversation with the Planning Commission, and it is, okay, you've got 7 zoning districts now in these areas. How do we want to start consolidating them and what does it look like? And then that's going to be the messy work of saying, like, well, for one, I don't understand why this district says that 5,000 square foot lot is okay for a dwelling unit, but this one requires 20,000. So let's start with that column maybe and see, like, do we need gradations there or not? And so it's going to be messy, hard, public work to go through that. And the plan doesn't say we want 1. It doesn't say we're going to end up with 3, but that's going to be the process. And until we get there, I'm always reluctant. I think, like, there's some on my planning commission who really are, in their minds, it's like, I see one district, one residential district, easy. I want fewer than 7. I don't know where we'll end up, but that'll be sort of the sausage making process to figure out how we realize that. What does it look like? How is it implemented? So for somebody who's a property owner, the message that I think they should be hearing from this is, across the city, this plan, as if adopted in its current format, it's going to provide a lot more flexibility everywhere. It's going to be appropriately scaled. You're not going to have a 10-story building in the middle of a neighborhood, but it is moving away to say that only single family picket fence house, that is no longer the only housing type that we embrace here. For many years, in a lot of communities, not just Ann Arbor, we built single family homes and we built apartment complexes, and there was very little in between. And that's the notion of missing middle. It is, communities actually used to evolve with a variety of housing types. I think you mentioned People want ownership opportunities, but they might not want to mow the grass. They might not want that land. And my job and the planning commission's job, and ultimately the city council will decide is how do we want to start providing more flexibility for people to build the types of units that'll provide more ownership opportunities? Because right now, in a lot of areas, it's either a single family property with land or nothing. And so if we can start providing more opportunities and more types and different types in more areas of the city, I think that'll benefit it. We do not get to determine how much it sells for. We don't get to determine how much it rents for. So that will remain a challenge. That's why I think resources are important, because when we put resources into it, that's when we do have agency to do that. But when we're just regulating it, we don't have the ability to say how much it costs. At the end of the day, I still think this community benefits from 3 1,000 square foot units versus a single 3,000 square foot unit on the same parcel. The other question was, what was your second question? You talked about RC zone and
it had to do with the, if somebody who wanted to buy, but, like you're
yeah.
seeing $1 million, $2.5 million
Yep.
condos, but we're not saying a smaller one thing. And I understand, like for me, I understand because it costs a lot of money to build, and you want to get the developer wants to have wants a profit. And when there isn't that, before there was a lot of federal dollars that came out years and years ago, and most of those federal dollars, they slowly, and then it's that snowballed or avalanched into drying up. But like you had touched on there needing to be the resources. So yeah.
I think one thing I would just add to sort of maybe wrap that up is when we're talking about this, we don't regulate between rental or owner. So when we're talking about adding duplexes or triplex to neighborhoods, those could be realized as rental units. They could be realized as ownership units. When we regulate, we are agnostic to that. We regulate housing units. So just like we can't regulate by price, we can't regulate the sort of tenure, the ownership, or the arrangement of that unit. When it is rental, as you're well aware, we have inspections because we want to make sure that you're providing a safe space when you're offering it for business. But ideally, if we're successful and we start realizing different types of housing, it's going to expand our supply both for renters and for owners. Jordan?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I guess to piggyback on that, like there are also a lot of renters that do want to own, and so I think uplifting that is important. And that often I hear this, we can build 3 1,000 units, or we could build a 3,000 square foot house, and like maybe there's a middle of like 2 1,500 square foot houses that are on a split lot or something like that. And so we met with the Community Land Trust here a couple of months ago, and I'm wondering, in that same vein of like, they are working to try to have things that are purchasable and that are affordable, and how we are working with them as a city and planning commission, and how we are uplifting that in the plan was my first question.
They're at Planning Commission this week. We've been working with them for a long time. I've been providing a lot of different avenues to them. They have listened to some, they've not listened to other of those. The most recent one is they proposed a text amendment. Basically, I mentioned accessory dwelling units. Our accessory dwelling units are currently limited to 600 or 800 square feet, depending on your lot size. They're intended to be very small for not insignificantly for affordability. I think keeping them small, again, it's no guarantee of amount, but I do think the smaller they are comparatively to other similarly positioned units, they are going to be more affordable. Their program, they were requesting an amendment that would allow up to a 1,700 square foot accessory dwelling unit. And honestly, our staff recommendation was denial. We are in the context of a of a comprehensive plan. And part of that plan is we are recommending essentially by right development across the city for triplexes at this point. And the planning commission ultimately made some modifications to the language, and they ultimately did not recommend approval of it. It still advances to the city council, but I think I don't want to speak for the planning commission, but some of the reasons that I do think that they voted against it were that it seemed disingenuous. It was a 1,700 square foot accessory dwelling unit on a 1,800 square foot primary house doesn't really feel like an accessory dwelling unit or a granny flat. It feels more like a duplex. And so it felt like I think some of the planning commission was really struggling. Everybody across the board, staff included, is interested in finding the right way. But I think there's also an aspect of being clear, transparent, and honest to our regulatory and to the public about the decisions we're making. So that's actually one of the things that I mentioned to the Planning Commission. And one of the things that I'm sort of exploring now is maybe the question is not to make this so hard. Maybe it shouldn't be so restrictive that it can only be a 1,700. Maybe it should just be, if we're heading there as a community, maybe we should allow duplexes in single family. Why bring the weight of these other restrictions or measurements and so again, the planning commission votes as a body, they speak as a body, but I think that was some of the tension. Nonetheless, that's going to the city council for consideration. They're the final arbiter of that. We also have 2 permits in by them right now that we're on the verge of. I think we're waiting for some resubmitted plans for them. So they're also moving forward with some sites. It's challenging. It's challenging to build housing. It's challenging to build affordable housing. We have to be really mindful because our regulatory framework we're never going to draft a regulation that's only applies to one organization. It applies to everybody. And so we do have to be mindful of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And when I think about like, how do we help folks build wealth, particularly like Black folks, Indigenous folks, people who have been marginalized in our community, like having these units that are smaller, that are not just throwing away rent feels really important. So I'm glad to hear that's being considered because it does feel. So that kind of leading to my second question, like how were renters engaged specifically? 50% of the renters of the city is renters. So are we making sure that when we get feedback and when we engage with the community, that we are engaging with people at a 50% renter rate? And then second kind of part to that is like, are we doing racial equity assessments on these steps? How is kind of assessing how what we're doing is impacting vulnerable populations part of the plan? Because I kind of read a little bit of that, but I'm just hoping for some more clarity on those 2 things.
Yeah, we did it a couple of ways. I would never, in both of those accounts, I would never say that there is a success that you reach or you don't reach. But I can tell you how we approached it. One, when we first started this, we solicited applicants to a steering committee. I didn't call people that were on boards and commissions. I didn't reach out to people that had been involved in the past. We did a very open call. As part of that, one of the things we asked them is, what was your tenure of housing? Were you a renter? Were you an owner? And I think at least half of our steering committee were renters. Some not even in the city, because part of it was also we wanted to hear from people who experience the city in different ways. So that was one way we did it. I acknowledge that through we asked for that type of information through most of our public workshops and the like. It's voluntary, however, so we don't get always the same information, and via the online survey. We had really good rates of renter participants in those as well. We actually had, when we did some of the data analysis, we were underrepresented with Black respondents and with University of Michigan respondents. And so some of the things that we did as part of that is we actually reached out to organizations. We went to Elks Lodge. We reached out to, I think it was the Black Chamber of Commerce, some churches. Similarly for University of Michigan, we tried to make some connections to the University of Michigan student government. We actually just hung out on the corner of the Diag for an afternoon. We reached out to a student planning club. We never were able to get sort of a representative University of Michigan sample, and that's really important. I mean, sometimes people discount that because all these students are going to be gone in a couple of years, but they are very representative of an ongoing population here in our community. It's really important that we hear from them. So those are some of the ways we did it. You can we had an online survey that was one of the primary places that we were able to measure a lot of demographic data, and those results are what drove us in those particular areas to try to do some additional reach out. We had also reached out to I'm trying to think what else, the Dunbar Homes Community Council we had also reached out to as part of that, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple others, but we did some assessments. We found some gaps. We tried to remedy it. It was hard. I don't sit here and say that we got an absolutely representative population everywhere, but we did try very hard.
Thank you. And then lastly, is there a goal for housing that's less than 60% AMI? Tried searching the report for something like that, but I didn't see. Uh-oh, looks like he's frozen or I'm frozen.
Oops. I think he froze.
Okay. Maybe Travis or Cynthia, do we have like a set goal for less than 60% AMI housing?
I'm not sure that I can answer that exactly either.
I can't answer it either. There should be, I feel like, but I can't say that I have I don't have an answer to that now.
Thank you guys for trying, and hopefully we can get an answer.
Brett's coming back.
I'm sorry about that. My computer did not like what I just said.
You're back. My question was, do we have a specific goal set for housing that's less than 60% AMI?
Yes. For now, we've maintained the 140 per year in the plan. So that's it's based on the 2015 data.
Okay.
But that is the one housing numeric target that is in the comp plan. Market rate, it's more broad that we want to increase supply, but we have maintained the 140 unit target in the current draft.
How come we aren't increasing it? Like, given how much we're seeing homeless numbers go up, and I don't know, just thinking about all the things, that's my world these days. And like, it seems like if we're really taking a step toward equity, we really need to step up some of those goals with the support for the more vulnerable folks.
I think I don't mean to be dismissive of that, but it would be great if we got 140 units a year. I think we got a long way to go to get that. And somebody I really respect, once we were talking about it, and they had suggested that it doesn't matter what the goal is, you're never going to be able to provide enough for the need in that regard. And so I think you're right. Obviously, there's opportunity to do that. And I should say this plan, the intention of this plan is to not only modernize it for what we want today, but to modernize it so it's actually more living document, and so we can revisit it and we can revisit those policies as we go forward. I totally see that happen at some point, but honestly, I think if we were banging out 140 affordable units per year, that would be a great problem to have to figure out what our next threshold was for that target. Hannah, did I see you had your hand up earlier, or did I magically answer everything?
I could ask many questions, but
Ah.
I guess one I had in mind, you were talking about, we're gonna adopt the plan and then it's up to the planning commission, the planning department to start like actually changing the regulations to do these things. How long does that process take? I know you said with the ADUs that took like over 20 years. Are there certain priorities, like zones you want to address first? I know you mentioned like reducing residential down to fewer categories. Yeah, so I was just wondering about that in general.
You look in the plan, there's actually an implementation schedule, and we start breaking down some of those things by priority. They're sort of general, they're like 1 to 3, 4 to 6 years and the like. But I will tell you that my planning commission, or the city's planning commission, is very serious about this. They have populated a lot as a high priority in the first 1 to 3 years. We're actually, like I said, we just wrapped up those edits, so I don't want to sit there and mention specific ones. But I think that there's a real intention to move quickly with this, and it will take time. I want to get more serious about revisiting this plan on a regular basis. And so the other thing that I've been really grateful for is that the city actually invested more in this. We have like a full-time position now, a senior planner on my team, Michelle Bennett. If you haven't had an opportunity to work with her, she's fantastic. She's dedicated to this work. So once this plan's done, our next job is to start moving forward with this. And that's something that can happen sometimes is in the context of doing development review, it's easy to be responsive to other applications and the like. I'm really grateful that we now have resources dedicated to this. So not only are we going to be working on it, the plan also has a series of metrics about how we're going to measure success and evaluate success. And so we're going to get right to measuring, sharing with the public what we're accomplishing. That said, it's not going to be as fast as somebody wants some item, and I think that's important. I think it's important to take the time to make sure we're doing it right. Generally speaking, I hope that after 2 to 3 years, we have drastically reframed our zoning regulations to fewer districts with more housing capabilities, and improved our processes. That I would say, like, if after 2 to 3 years we basically have a new Unified Development Code that accomplishes those things, I would be thrilled. Maybe a couple council members could help me make sure we get the resources for that.
This is very much a priority, I think, for most of us. So
I thought that might be pretty safe.
Yes.
Good
Yes.
joke. Any other questions? Anything I didn't cover? Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, I don't see any more questions or hands raised, so I just wanted to thank you for coming and answering all of our
Yeah.
questions.
My pleasure.
For some of us reading the plan and then you see everything online from all the different sides and all of their feelings about it, it can get really confusing.
Yeah.
And so for me, this was really, really helpful. And when things progress, I guess, is it draft 3 and then it's done, or is it draft 3 draft 4?
Draft three will be presented for community distribution. So literally what that means is it's going to sort of get designated as this is what we want to adopt. And we actually not only share it with all of you in the community, but we actually also share it with our neighboring communities as well. And so draft 3 will be the document that we accomplish that with. And hopefully everybody will love it so much that it will come back in its similar form and it'll be adopted.
Is it possible for you to come back when draft 3 is published and give a presentation
Sure.
again? Because like I said, this was so helpful
Yeah.
that
If you can I philosophize for just 1 minute around the comprehensive plan? You mentioned that there's a lot of conversation in the community about it. And I will just say that I think it's a really exciting time to be thinking about these issues. I mean, you as a commission, I think, are very interested in housing generally. It's a really exciting and challenging time. I will tell you that in my career, I have been part of a lot of communities where, and a lot of dialogue about development here and elsewhere. And it has often been a tension about change versus not change. And now I think that there is this broad community tension that I think that shifted. I think it is how should we change and how big or how fast should we change? And I think it's new for a lot of people. I think it's a really natural evolution of cities. Cities do evolve. They do change and will continue to change. And I think that I like, there's a lot of strong opinions on various facets of this plan. And I will just say that it can make it more complicated, but I'm also like I am really legitimately grateful. There are communities that are like starting to talk about housing. And here in this community, we have a renters commission. We've had an affordable housing fund for decades. We've had a housing commission. This is a community that it's always had these issues top of mind, and it's not always succeeded in finding the best ways to deal with it, but it is a really exciting time because I think the general public dialogue is, I don't know, it's a little egotistical as a community, but it seems like it's starting to catch up a little bit. And that makes it, like I said, you've probably seen a lot of various perspectives on this, and some fear, some advocacy, some optimism, some skepticism. But I do think at the end of the day, it's a really exciting time because I do think um, so many more people now are being touched by housing issues than were even 5 or 10 years ago. So many more people that they know. And so I think it's a really exciting time to be having these conversations. So when you're seeing all that, both sides of that, whether it's online or on social media or whatever, how great is it that we have this dialogue and we have the people who are excited to be talking about it? And we're in a community that has not only invested in it for a long time, but we're trying to figure out the next levels of that, the next steps, the next direction. So I'll just share that's how at times it can be challenging to be at a planning commission meeting till midnight, sort of wrestling through the details. But that's one of the things that keeps me excited because it really is, as a planner, it's not something I've experienced in a lot of other places before. It's a really unique time right now. So
It is, but it's also, it can be very overwhelming when
for
watching like
sure.
the planning
Yeah.
commission
Yeah.
meeting or
Yeah.
other meetings, and there's a lot of opinions
Yeah.
either way. I'm not putting a judgment call
Oh,
on
yeah.
those
No,
opinions.
100%. Yeah.
It's just, it can be overwhelming trying to figure out, well, what does this mean? What does that mean? They're using all of these terms that I've never heard of before, right?
Yeah.
And so having the presentation from you here tonight for me was, I'll say, was very helpful because of how you were able to define some of the terms and some of what's happening, what's in the plan. And so that's why I was saying after draft three, if you could come back, or if someone else could come back and, inform us again, then that would be great.
But we're including a glossary for all those terms too. So keep me honest. Make sure I'm telling you what they mean. Thank you so much. I will, as indicated, I'll follow up with Kristen after we get that next draft. If you have any additional questions that you didn't get to tonight that you'd like, please don't hesitate to share them. You can always just reach me directly too. My email, I think it was on the slide. It's BLENART, blenart@a2gov.org. Or if you don't want to remember that, planning@a2gov.org is always a great way to get to us.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
Bye. And Next on the agenda is the what's it called? Forgot the exact name, the standing committee meeting scheduling, which is instead of, I'll let Hannah talk about it. Hannah?
Yeah, so we're talking about instead of having a tech meeting or tenant education committee meeting that we schedule every single month, like a different date, we'd like to just come up with a standing time for uh basically just a working committee meeting. We usually just discuss things in our work plan. And I've already talked to a few people about this, but we're thinking that either the Wednesday or the Thursday before our regular meeting would work well for a lot of people. And it sounds like 5:30 seems to be a good time. Yeah, so really we're looking for feedback about is that a good time? Uh, any other ideas? You could always email me too. So I don't know. I'll open it up. Does anyone have any immediate thoughts or feedback on that? Do we have a preference for Wednesday versus Thursday, if anything? I kind of like Thursday just to like keep it consistent with the regular meeting. Um, Easier to remember. Okay. Yeah, I'll send out an email and double check with Kim. She's not here. But yeah, I think that's all I have for that.
Sorry, and then the next thing is planning for the next meeting. Let's see, it's September, so we'll talk about how Festival went because Festival is at the end of this month, and Kristen did send out a link for that. And was it? I guess there will be planning an update on what the next event will be. It might be the Green Fair. It would either be the Green Fair or another library event. Hannah?
Do we know what's the date for the Green Fair? It's around the same time as our meeting, right? Approximately.
I think so. Kristen?
It's September 19th.
Yeah.
So the day after the meeting in September.
Okay, so then there'll be a reminder about the Green Fair um, at that meeting. And we do not have a speaker lined up for that meeting, but hopefully at that meeting, there might be a update on the junk fees. Um,
Yes,
and
I would like to have that added to the agenda. So I just sent over one final change that we're having made to the draft to Attorney Richards earlier today. At which point, once I get that back, I'd like to send it around for everybody to review so that we can discuss it, so that you have it ahead of time, and then we can discuss it at the next meeting, just to make sure that if there are any final things, we get them caught.
right, so that'll be our main item, and hopefully we'll have 6 people, and we can vote on changing the language in the bylaws for what makes a quorum. And that's it for me, Hannah.
I did pull up the minutes from an older meeting where we did already vote on changing the bylaws. Um, our new idea was to have the quorum be however many people we have on the commission cut in half plus one. And it was in the minutes from the December 2024 meeting.
Right, and then at one point, the attorneys came back and said that something couldn't be changed because I think it was like just the normalized language of the bylaws for all of the commissions. But maybe given the documented difficulties that we've had with maintaining a quorum, um, that there might be an exception for that, or if we go and ask just for that one. Um, Councilmember Redina?
Yeah, I don't see John still on or Riser still on, but uh, that's when I guess I didn't realize that that came back as a challenge because I think we've we have differences in bylaws from committee to committee. We have our model bylaws, but there are differences that exist. So we can follow back up with that on that piece. And if this body has already requested that, then it might make it easier for council to kind of step in and make that adjustment since it's already been requested of council. So I can follow up with staff on what the process would be because I agree. I think particularly with some of the absences we've had, and then also we have, some vacancies right now. A majority of those seats that are filled make sense.
Thank you. So then, on the agenda, should we just put that as an update item?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Barb?
Should we, should we be adding to the agenda, having a conversation about how we might try to recruit new members?
Normally that's something that we handle in the tech meeting,
Ah, okay.
or the working session meeting. Um, and so I think for next month's working session, that we should probably add that to the agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Are there any other questions? Okay, then moving on, go for the report from council. Councilmember Adina?
Yeah, thanks. So on that kind of same topic, actually at the start of this meeting, right before the meeting, I called one of the folks that we'd aligned on moving forward as a recommendation to the mayor to fill the seat. She is still interested. She is still a renter, and so I've emailed the mayor and asked for his consideration of her appointment. I think we may have mentioned at the last meeting that Rosanita and I have also both spoken with, and actually, I don't know if Cynthia also has chatted with this person, but at least two of us have spoken with another applicant that we are interested in having on the body, and we're still waiting for her to confirm with her employer that it doesn't constitute a conflict. And so we're really interested in her based on her perspective. So we've kind of waited, and I think we'll probably follow back up again to make sure that she's somebody who can serve. But hopefully we'll get some of those vacancies filled and be able to fill some of that. And then obviously I think we were all a little surprised by Dan's sudden resignation this week because she's generally on the meetings. So that didn't help us with quorum this evening. But I know that she mentioned to me, I think she's moving and things like that. And so I think, just life changes for her. It made sense for her to tender her resignation. But hopefully we can get that third seat filled now that we have a new vacancy that we need to consider.
Right, and the other person did just text me and they said that their supervisor was out. And so that's what is lengthened the process, but there's definitely still interested and they're still trying to get that taken care of. But I know that previously, because of the number of vacancies, you were able to kind of um, get it toward it was only on, I think it was one vote instead of the two votes from council. Is that a possibility for the person who you're putting forward to the mayor this time, or will the two meetings happen before our next meeting?
Yeah, I can chat with him about that. If he's interested in moving this person forward, then yeah, it just requires an additional, generally appointments to these boards and commissions are pretty unanimous at the council table. And it requires, I think, 7 votes instead of 6 or something like that from the council table. So it's pretty easy to be able to expedite that if we need to do that for quorum.
Okay, great, thank you. Councilmember Harrison, do you have any updates for us?
No, nothing to add today. No.
Okay,
And
okay, then, are there any reports from the commissioners? Or from Kristen? Oh, sorry, Jordan.
Yeah, I'll just do a really quick one. We had landlord advisory. So the landlord advisory is a group of Washtenaw housing area, like they're Washtenaw housing folks, plus community providers like SOS and Ozone House and Safe House, and landlords that all meet together. And just throwing out there, if we have any landlords that are watching this later that join, we would really love some more landlords to join. And in particular, there are 40 vouchers that have just come online and 40 more that are coming soon, as well as increased funding for some programs, like the program that helps folks that have been justice impacted. And so there, even in a world where money is getting cut, there are some resources that are still out there, and even some that are kind of staying at the same level, and some that are increasing slightly, and we do need more providers. So if anybody is interested, Kristen through the Renters Commission email can connect you with me. Otherwise, my email is Jordan Else, my name, np@gmail.com. And so if any other landlords are interested in joining, we would love to have some more folks on board.
Okay. Councilmember Harrison?
yeah, I lied. Just under the weather, so I wasn't thinking, but the Leo grant, I should actually announce, I guess, or mention that Rising Hope for Housing they were recognized at the state level and received a Leo grant. I think, and Rosanita, please chime in if you or I don't have the details in front of me. I think it was $279,000 to assist individuals who are returning from incarceration back into the community for housing support. A lot of this support will actually go to landlords to help support and help individuals. Well, it'll help the homeowners, or excuse me, I'm sorry. It will help renters with I believe deposits, security deposits, maybe in first month rent, but it also there's, I believe, a program to help support landlords as well. But that was really great news that came out a couple of weeks ago. And this particular funding, individuals do not already have to possess a voucher to receive this funding support. So that's great news. Also, the housing choice vouchers that were from MISHDA, going to individuals who are also returning from incarceration back into the community, that has come back online. Those vouchers were being provided to Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office back a few years ago, a couple of years ago. That kind of was the basis of the Rising Hope for Housing funding that the city council supported with marijuana excise tax funds. It was a niche group, individuals that are impacted by the carceral system and also possess a voucher to help them receive trauma supportive wraparound support, trauma-informed wraparound support. I've got COVID, so I have brain fog, so I'm really just trying to like find my words here. But
Trauma-informed case management
thank you.
services.
Thank you.
And, and then, assistance with, it historically it's been household related needs like rent arrears, um, was it security deposit, and I think a little bit with utilities, but it's available for some other items as well.
Correct. So that's the new news about the Leo grant is great news, and there was a press release that went out about that a couple of weeks ago. So that's my update.
Okay, thank you. And Kristen, do you have any news for us?
No news, no update.
Thank you. And was it so then it's the second public comment? I know we're not live, but
Yes. We do have one participant, John Reiser's just watching. I just was texting with him briefly. John, if you'd like to address the Renters Commission, let us know. We can promote you in. And if not, we'll close. All right, no indication, so I think we can close it.
okay. And then the last thing on the agenda before we adjourn is there was one communication to the Renters Commission. It was from a renter who has a voucher. And it looked like there were potentially some issues with mold and possible non-compliance on the part of the landlord with the voucher. The they were I think they were given a form for the county to fill out regarding the mold, and it was referred to the housing commission, and the housing commission said that they were taking care of it. Did I miss anything, Kristen?
Nope, all good.
Okay, so then the last item on the agenda is adjournment. And so I'll just say, if you can, then please sign up to volunteer for Festival on October, is it 27th? Um, is it from 4:30 to 7:30?
I'll resend the link now, so it'll be on the inbox.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, thanks. Then yeah, so then Kristen will resend the link. Hopefully, some of you can volunteer. And other than that, have a great rest of the month. Have a fun, hopefully Labor Day weekend. Hopefully you're off on that Monday, and we'll see you in September. Oh, and for our last, we lost Michelle. So I was going to tell her happy school starting again. So anyway, have a great night, everyone.